What's up guys, I'm CandidCrandell and today I have a special guest joining me, Ian Harding's face! Ta-da! That's probably the closest I'm ever going to get to having him actually in one of my YouTube videos. Today, Ian Harding's face and I are going to be talking about Pretty Little Liars Season 5, Episode 11, No One Here Can Love or Understand Me. You know the drill. If you haven't seen the episode yet and you don't want me to spoil anything for you, pause this video right now and come back later after you have seen the episode. At the end of the last episode, we saw the person in the black hoodie folding several other black hoodies along with a hospital uniform. I was watching this again and I have a huge question that I'm not sure we've ever really addressed. Do we know for sure that Black Hoodie is A? We've just always kind of assumed, but wouldn't it be crazy if the person in the black hoodie this whole time has been Allison and every cutscene that we have seen has been of Allison while she was on the run? Wouldn't that be interesting? So the girls have decided that they are going to go to the police and tell on Allison. Our little liars are growing up. They're going to the police of their own free will. They stop on a street corner and the television display behind them changes to show a picture of Allison in the hospital dress uniform that she was wearing when she came to visit Hannah after she got hit by the car that Mona was driving. And there is a message. It says, "We're all in this together, A." Ooh, creepy. And at this point, the girls decide they can't go to the police because no one will believe them that they didn't know that Allison was alive if they see a picture of her visiting Hannah's hospital room. Hannah could be like, I was on a great deal of morphine and I just got hit by a car and my leg was broken, so yeah, I kind of thought I was hallucinating because at that point I definitely thought she was dead. The final message from A is act normal, bitches. What is normal anymore for these poor girls? Who would have an interest in making sure the girls don't go to the police? Obviously Allison. And we'll go into this more later. I really think this is a situation where the writers are leading us astray. I think this is a sleight of hand. There are several times in this episode where they seem to very clearly be pointing the finger at Allison as A, and I think that that's gotta mean that she's not. There has to be a bigger twist coming because there's still 2 seasons left after this. They're not gonna give it away that easily. I'm wondering if the person that Mona, Sydney, and Jenna were meeting up with has anything to do with this. Their plan at that time seemed to be to run Allison out of Rosewood and isolate her from her friends. If the girls start thinking that Allison is A, that's exactly what whoever this ringleader person is wants, because then Allison is completely alone. The brew is up for sale. Oh no, where will Toby live? Where will Spencer get her caffeine fix? Personally, I think that Ezra should try and buy the brew. Let's face it, his chances of being a teacher anymore, not very strong. But if he opened a coffee shop in Rosewood, he could spy on Rosewood residents even better. Spencer and Emily are talking about who they think could have sent them that message. Well, it could be A, or it could be Allison, or it could be A making us think it's Allison. Then Spencer's phone rings, it's Allison. I think that a lot of people were like, oh my god, that's a clue, that's a clue. They never point directly to who it is. In the past, when the girls have been so certain that they know who A is, they've always been wrong. They've only known part of the story, they're only going off of part of the evidence, and nothing is really as it seems. So I think that they should be careful to jump to the conclusion that Allison is the one sending them these messages. While I totally understand their logic in thinking that Allison is the most obvious person to have a motive to want them to keep quiet, I think that A has a bigger motive. Emily says that she wasn't defending Allison, she was defending the person who she used to think of her as. She's really regretting all the things that she said to Paige because what she had with Paige was real and genuine. I don't necessarily think that this means that she should go running back into Paige's arms, but I think it's good for her to sit there and realize, oh, the Allie that I had built up in my head was an idealized version of her. Now that she's back, Emily is realizing that there were probably instances in which Allison showed this side of herself before and Emily just kind of ignored it. This is a really great growth moment for Emily where she's realizing that your memories of people are often better than who they actually are. Apparently Allie's dad has taken her out of town because he's concerned about Cyrus being on the run. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Didn't Allie get a message from A like a couple weeks ago saying that if she tried to leave Rosewood that they would kill her? Caleb is having trouble sleeping, so he's drinking at night, and Hannah finds out and she is not happy. He won't really say to her why he can't sleep, but I think we all know that it has something to do with the fact that Ravenswood is freaking creepy. Caleb wants to know how A got a hold of that picture of Allison in the hospital. It's a surveillance tape picture, so not just anyone can access that. Emily shows Ezra the picture of Allison and the man wearing the camo jacket standing at the ATM and asks if he's seen it. He says he hasn't. Emily also wants to know if Ezra is at all familiar with the name Cyrus Petrillo. He says that he isn't, but his face makes me question that just a little bit. He also says that he doesn't have much from when Allison was missing, that it's all a blank. Really? Is it all a blank? Because I thought that all of the stalking that you were doing of Arya and her friends and meeting with Mona, I kind of thought that that was filling in the blanks of when Allison was missing. Maybe I'm being overly skeptical of Ezra, but as far as I'm concerned, he hasn't necessarily cleared his name yet. Getting shot doesn't do that. It's like we all forgot for a second about all the crazy stuff he was doing because he got shot in the stomach and we're like, oh, he might die. But now that he's alive, clearly, I think we should all be still questioning him. Mona and Mike are hanging out again, and Arya is not happy about it. I tend to disagree with Arya on this front, mostly because I don't necessarily think that Mike is innocent. Arya is under the impression that Mike is not at all involved in the A game and that he's getting involved with Mona, who is a bad person. But Mike disappears all the time, and we don't really know a great deal about his character. He may be a lot more like Mona than any of us have realized. Ezra wants to know why Cyrus would have taken the risk of giving a false confession, unless it's because Allison had something on him that was even worse. Emily seems to think that that's what's going on because 9 times out of 10 Allison blackmails people. What could Allison have on Cyrus that would get him in bigger trouble than if he told the police that he kidnapped and held a girl hostage for 2 years? Ezra tells Emily that he's going to look into Cyrus. You know what, if he's gonna be stalking, at the very least he can get us some answers about Cyrus too. Ezra says to Emily, thanks for trusting me, and Emily responds, I have to trust you. And Ezra says, well, thank you for your honesty. And I feel like that exchange is a sign that we should not trust Ezra Fitz as much as I would like to. Sorry. He's sketching me out, waiting for him to pull out his baseball cap and his black jacket, you know? Arya talks to her dad about Mike and Mona and is like, look, if we both gang up on Mike, he's just gonna wanna be with Mona more. We should keep our eye on the situation, but keep our distance. That struck a chord with me because that sounds very much like what A is doing. In most of the instances, A may be pulling the strings behind it, but A isn't the one whose hand is physically pulling the trigger, so that they're not going to get in trouble. I've had my doubts about Byron for a while. Also, isn't it strange that Byron is back in town now that Allison is out of town? I know that we saw him talking to Ella in a previous episode, but he wasn't really like a central character of an episode until the episode when Allison wasn't there. Not sure if there's any significance to that, but just thought I'd point it out. The girls are talking at school about who would potentially want to keep them quiet, and Hannah says that she had a bad thought that Allison would want to keep them quiet. Here again is another instance of the writers being like, Allison's the one sending these messages. Even the girls think it's Allison. As soon as the girls think that it's someone, you know that it's not. They always think that they know who A is, but they never do. So the fact that several of them have said, oh, I think that these messages might be coming from Allison, they're probably not. Hannah talks to Spencer about her sober coach and asks if there's any way that he could talk to Caleb, and Spencer's like, well, you shouldn't just like introduce a stranger to Caleb and be like, hey, let's talk about addiction. Spencer says that she has a better person in mind to talk with Caleb. We finally get a Paley scene after so many episodes without one. Still a little awkward. This is not the first time that Emily has pushed Paige aside for someone else. She did it for Maya. Now she's doing it for Allison, and I think she's realizing that she may be running out of chances with Paige. Do I call you Officer Toby or Cadet Toby? I like Cadet. It sounds like you're in Space Command. Oh, Spencer. The reason that Spencer is talking to Toby is that she's going to get him to come back to Rosewood to talk to Caleb about his drinking. Never underestimate the power of a good bromance. Spencer and Hannah find a note. It's from Melissa. I'd recognize that anal retentive handwriting anywhere. Which I think is a clue that Melissa probably didn't write any of the A notes that they've received thus far, because Spencer would have instantly recognized Melissa's handwriting. Or she's crazy and she's disguising her handwriting. Possible. The note reads, I have to write this quickly. Dad's taking me to the airport. I'm sorry, Spencer. You'll know everything soon. I promise. Whenever someone leaves a note saying that they're going somewhere on Pretty Little Liars, I get skeptical. Especially after Ian's suicide note turned out to be a fake. I have a really hard time when a character's like, I'm writing to you to let you know that I'm not going to be here anymore. It's almost as if someone is telling them what to write. I don't know if this is what's happening with Melissa or if she's legitimately getting out of town, but I think that we have to at least consider the fact that someone may have forced her to write that. Hannah points out that A told Allison that she couldn't leave town. How did she leave Rosewood? The girls realize that Allison might have made a deal with A. What kind of deal did she make? The kidnapper got released and she just also disappears? Come on. Sketchy 101. Lieutenant Tanner approaches Aria, Emily, and Hannah. She says that she wants to talk to them. No, 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 no. Do not talk to her without a parent or a lawyer present. I know that some of you are 18, but I really don't care. Do they not teach constitutional rights at Rosewood High? Like, do they not realize that they have the right to remain silent and not be drawn in by Lieutenant Tanner's offer of coffee? Spencer and Toby are talking about Caleb, and they both agree that they feel like he seems somewhat haunted, that there's something more going on there than just the drinking. Freaking Ravenswood is what happened. Lieutenant Tanner assures the girls that they will catch Cyrus and not to worry, but if they notice anything out of the ordinary, that they should let the police know and let them figure out if it's relevant. That seemed like a bit of an underhanded dig, being like, look, stop investigating this. You guys often think that evidence is relevant because some anonymous person texts you and tells you that it is, so let me do my job. Just as she's about to leave, Lieutenant Tanner turns around and says, oh, I have been meaning to ask you girls a question. Who do you think killed Bethany Young? The fact that she's asking them that, not good. No cop is ever going to ask a civilian for their opinion or their theory on a murder, unless they're considering you. Basically, anytime Lieutenant Tanner asks the girls a question, I want to be like, it's a trap! The girls say to Lieutenant Tanner that they haven't really thought about it. None of them knew Bethany. Apparently, the only connection between Bethany and the girls that the police could find is that Bethany was killed about 30 yards away from where the girls were sleeping. That's it. At least until they look into the fact that Aria was volunteering at Radley and looking at Bethany's sketchbook, and Spencer and Emily were going to a stable asking questions about a horse named Custard. No connection, except the ones that they made. Hannah calls Spencer and says that Tanner thinks that they killed Bethany Young. It kind of upsets me that Spencer wasn't there with the girls, and I think that's honestly the only reason why Lieutenant Tanner was even able to get them to talk, because Spencer Hastings would have been like, shut down, lawyer up, she knows. The Hastings have trained their daughters well. You do not talk to the police without a lawyer present. Melissa sends Spencer a package from the international terminal of the airport, so apparently she made it to the airport, or someone made it to the airport with the thing that she was sending to Spencer, and it turns out to be the video that we saw her recording at the end of the previous episode. In the video, Melissa says, Spencer, you're right. I have to tell you the truth before it's too late. Dad's taking me to the airport. I'm going back to England. He's been wanting me to go back ever since that night at the police station where I told him what I told him. Maybe Dad's right. It might be easier to keep quiet. I absolutely love what they did with this scene. It starts out with Spencer just watching Melissa's videotape on her laptop, and then it kind of crossfades into Melissa recording the tape in the living room of the Hastings house with Spencer standing behind the camera. I don't think this is literal. I don't think Spencer was there watching this happen. On the night that Allison disappeared, Melissa heard Allison and Spencer fighting, and then she saw Spencer walking away with the shovel. When she walked over to where Allison had been, she saw a body wearing the same clothes that Allison had been wearing, the jeans, a yellow tank top, and the girl also had blonde hair. Melissa immediately thought that Spencer had done something to Allison, and she didn't want anyone to know about it, so she pushed the body into the grave and started covering it up. Melissa also mentions here that it seems like everyone who had ever made the mistake of touching Allie was there that night. I think this is significant because there have been several instances in which people have talked about everyone who saw Allie that night is dying. And then Melissa makes reference to a quote from The Tempest by William Shakespeare. The full quote from The Tempest that Melissa is referencing is this: "Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometime voices, that if I then had waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked I cried to dream again." This line is said by Caliban, and he's talking about the mystical properties of the island that they're on. I thought that it was interesting that Melissa brought this up because I'm sure that it's not insignificant. Anytime they include a literary reference in Pretty Little Liars, it almost always has a deeper meaning to it. I'm really hoping that what they're implying is not that Allison is cursed or anything like that. I don't want any of that Ravenswood shit here, please, no. I think it just supports the air of mystery that still surrounds the night that Allison disappeared. Melissa continues on saying, "Now I know it wasn't Allison, and she wasn't dead when I buried her. She was a stranger, and I buried her alive, because I thought I was protecting you." That night when they found out that there was a different girl in Allison's grave and that Allison was very much alive, the look of panic on Melissa's face was that she had killed someone else. If she had buried Allison, she didn't feel a great deal of guilt over it, and that most of Rosewood probably wouldn't care that Allison was gone. But now that it's an innocent stranger that Melissa says she didn't know at all, she's feeling extremely guilty. So when she was whispering to Peter Hastings, she was whispering that she was the one who buried that girl. And if the girl had been buried alive, like they were saying, she realized that she was responsible for her death. That's heavy. I can totally understand why Peter Hastings would have wanted to keep that covered up, because he thought it involved both of his kids. Melissa says, "Our family has a knack for self-preservation, but there comes a point when you go from survivor to predator, and I think that's what happened to us." This could be a reference to the evolution of Allison as a character. She started out lying and blackmailing people to survive because she thought that she had to, but there comes a point when she crosses the line from survivor to predator, or at the very least that the line has become blurred for her. A lot of the things that Allison is doing, she thinks she's doing them to protect herself, but it's coming from a place of paranoia now, and she's being more of a predator than just simply trying to survive. The big question is, who killed Bethany Young? It wasn't Spencer, because when Allie was explaining the night that she disappeared, she said to Spencer that she saw her with the shovel, Spencer dropped her pills, they had their little conversation, and then Spencer walked away with the shovel. So at that point, Melissa must have seen Spencer with the shovel. But does that mean that in that very short window between the argument between Allison and Spencer and Melissa coming over to that area where they were, Bethany Young was killed? How she ended up over there, we don't know. Why she was wearing the same clothes as Allison, we don't know. But there definitely seems to be a significance to it. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that Spencer wasn't the one to hit Bethany over the head with the shovel, because Allison said that she didn't hit anyone. And then Melissa didn't because Melissa found a body. Or Melissa could be lying, I suppose, and saying that she found a body and that she only buried it to protect Spencer. Let's go back a little ways to when Jason was talking about the night Allison disappeared, how he said he saw Melissa talking to Allison. That's what he thought it was at first. She had blonde hair, she was wearing a yellow shirt and jeans. But then he changed his story to thinking that maybe it was Cece talking to Melissa. So does that mean that there were 3 girls running around Rosewood wearing yellow tank tops and jeans with blonde hair the night that Allison disappeared? I don't know how likely that is. Or could Melissa have been talking to Bethany Young? And if she was, why wouldn't she have mentioned that? I think it will be very important to figure out who Melissa was talking to exactly. Which blonde in the yellow tank top and jeans. Hannah, Spencer, and Toby have decided to do an episode of Intervention, Pretty Little Liars edition, with Caleb at the Apple Rose Grill. You know, in a public place where he's definitely gonna feel attacked. Good idea. Have you not seen Intervention? They do it in private places where people can feel comfortable to talk about their feelings, not in center of town. Toby is super blunt with Caleb and just brings it up right away. He's like, "Oh, Hannah tells me you're not sleeping. What's up with that?" Caleb responds to Toby's question with, "Who died and made you Oprah?" Paige is at the brew and she is looking gorgeous in a little black dress with her hair all curled, and she runs into Emily there, who is helping out with a shift. Paige has 2 coffees, and I don't think it's because she's a caffeine addict. It's a really awkward moment, but at the same time, Emily can't get mad. Aria's mom ends up not being able to make it to the movie with her family, so Mike gives Mona her ticket, and Aria is once again not happy to see Mona. Aria has pretty much become the president of the I Hate Mona Vanderwall Club. Side note, Aria's bitch face is on point. She is given side eye like nobody's business. Paige comes into the theater that Aria, her family, and Mona are in with a girl in a pink dress who happens to be significantly less attractive than Emily. Just throwing it out there. Both Mona and Aria give Paige a look. Not necessarily fair because she's not in a relationship with Emily, and Emily was the one who pushed her away and chose Allie over her, so. Hannah wonders why Caleb wouldn't have been able to talk to her about what was going on and why he would be able to talk to Toby instead. Spencer says sometimes people want to tell you things, they just can't look you in the eye and say it. If you love someone, you should be able to tell them anything. Spencer responds, that's the theory. Aria whispers something to Mona in the middle of the movie that clearly upsets her. Janelle Parrish does a beautiful job with this scene. Mona excuses herself from the theater and goes to the bathroom, and Aria just sits there like, I don't know what's going on. Emily meets up with Ezra. He's found some information about the picture that she gave him. He says that the picture was taken 16 months ago. Ezra was able to find more images of Allison and the man in the camo jacket because he was able to use the timestamp on the original photo. This is important because remember when A showed the girls that picture of Allison at the hospital and it was timestamped? Ezra clearly knows how to get surveillance camera footage, stuff that was dated way back as well. If he was able to get footage from 16 months prior, don't most places destroy their tapes from that long ago? Pretty strange that he was able to get a hold of another picture, but lo and behold he does, and it shows the face of the man in the camo jacket is Cyrus Petrillo. Cyrus has apparently several other names that he goes by. He's got a record, just petty things, and he's never been convicted, but he definitely has a record, and Ezra says he was able to find it because he knew where to look. I'm beginning to wonder if Ezra is a private investigator. It would definitely give more validity to his creepy stalking. We either need to not trust him at all at this point, or we have to trust that he is looking into all of this because he's actually trying to find out the truth. Not sure who he's working for, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was looking into this whole situation for someone. Emily says that Allie is very good at knowing what someone wants and using it against them, and Ezra says it's a very special talent, one that causes a great deal of destruction. There seems to be a good amount of disdain in his voice. We haven't really yet figured out what kind of destruction Allie caused for Ezra. Sure, he got shot on the roof, that sucks, but prior to that, the only thing he could have gotten mad at her for was the fact that he was like hanging out with her and talking with her when she was younger than she said she was. At least that's all we know at this point. It seems like there's a piece of the puzzle that Ezra is holding back. Aria goes to look for Mona in the bathroom. Mona says to Aria, you are very good. You know right where to put the knife and twist it. Allie underestimated you. Why would Mona and Allie be having a conversation about Aria? Mona could potentially be saying this just based on what she read in Allie's diary, but I wonder if there's more to it than that. It seems that what Aria whispered to Mona was something about how her dad should hate her. Mona was the one that sent the letter to her mom that essentially ruined her parents' marriage. Or was she? Yes, Mona was A at that time, but what I think that Aria doesn't fully realize is that Ezra could have sent that note too. Aria and Mona are talking about Mike, and Mona says he deserves someone who is nice, which I am not. Maybe I should have just died when I fell off that cliff, and Aria tells Mona that she should never say that. Despite their differences, I don't think Aria wants anyone else to be dying. Mona says that she's just trying to protect herself, that that's all she's ever been doing. I kind of believe that on one hand, but she's also a super genius, so she might also be playing Aria. Mona gives a warning to Aria about Allison. Once she's finished with me, she'll come after you and the others. She can't trust you anymore. Not after Cyrus and not after New York. Aria wants to know what Mona knows about New York, and she cryptically says a few things, and I can guess at some others. So we still don't know what Mona knows about New York, but she knows that they were in New York, which is not good. Mona asks Aria if she thinks that Mike really likes her. I'm not sure what the point of this scene was, if we were supposed to have a genuine connection with Mona, or if it's Mona pulling the wool over all of our eyes and making herself look really sympathetic and scared, when in reality she's running this whole show. Spencer is re-watching Melissa's video and talking back to the Melissa on the screen. This is a really great scene. I really enjoyed watching Troyan work with the video in that way. She's very talented. Spencer points points out that Melissa always had a flair for dramatic exits. Does this count as a dramatic exit? I think it kind of does. Lieutenant Tanner comes over to the Montgomery house to see Byron. I just don't want her around. And why is she coming around so late at night? Does she not sleep? Byron confronts Lieutenant Tanner about talking to the girls when their parents are not present. She says that she knows the rules and wants to know if he does. Usually homicide investigations get simpler the more you work them, but if they get more complicated, usually that means that someone is complicating them. Someone smart. And that there are so many smart people involved with this case that it makes her job very interesting. It's definitely giving her brain a workout, that's for sure. She's not sure if Aria is involved in a homicide, but that she's certain that she's involved in the complications. She was just waiting for one of the girls to come forward and tell the truth, and one of them has. She doesn't specify who, and Byron says, which one wants to talk to you? Interesting that Byron would refer to his daughter's best friends that way. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this. Spencer and Emily say that they're not the ones that are talking to Lieutenant Tanner, and I think we all know that Hannah's not the one talking to her either. Maybe it's Allison who has agreed to talk to Lieutenant Tanner. Since we have seen Allison hooked up to a polygraph machine, it wouldn't surprise me if she is the one. That would be interesting if Allie was the one who made the girls not go to the police just so that she could throw them under the bus in turn. She made some kind of deal, and I have a feeling that if Allison is going to talk to Lieutenant Tanner, this was part of the deal. Emily shows the girls the picture that Ezra found of Allie and Cyrus, and they're all like, we need to show this to Tanner because it completely ends Allison's kidnapping story because she's standing at an ATM with this guy that she said kidnapped her, so it's clear that she knows him. Spencer decides to show Emily and Aria the video that Melissa left her. I'm really happy that she did this because too often have these girls kept vital information from one another and it's gotten them in trouble down the line. Caleb is explaining Ravenswood and the pact and everything to Hannah. Basically, he's just wrapping it all up since the show got canceled. They open the jars and all the fireflies. Mrs. Grunwald called it a great ascendance, so there's no more demons. But he's worried that if he goes to sleep, he will have a dream about Miranda where she'll come to him and tell him she's actually suffering and he didn't do the right thing. Caleb then proceeds to pick up the Ouija board and be like, you think this is a game? This is real. No, put down that Ouija board. If you were just living in Ravenswood and you're afraid of ghosts and you understand all that stuff, what in the hell are you doing even touching it? Why is it in the cabin? Like, why do you have that with you? Does everyone in Rosewood just have like a copy of the Ouija board game sitting around their house? While Hannah and Caleb are making out, the Ouija board moves on its own. Ooh, I don't need any of that. And it points to the words goodbye. A lot of people took that to mean that Caleb was the one that will die in the fatal finale, but I think we also need to remember that Hannah and Mona played with a Ouija board before. Spencer comes to the realization that there must have been a duplicate set of the clothes that Allison was wearing the night she went missing, because Allison was not wandering around naked. So how did Bethany get into the same clothes as Allison, and why was she wearing them? Especially if she escaped from Radley, where would she have gotten those clothes from? The only way that I think she could have gotten them is potentially if Mrs. De Laurentiis brought them for her. Maybe that was why Mrs. De Laurentiis didn't want Allison buying the yellow top in the first place. She said that it was too revealing, but maybe it was that she had already purchased that shirt for her other daughter that was in Radley, and she didn't want Allison wearing it. I have a feeling that Allison purchased that shirt knowing full well that her mom had bought it for Bethany. Aria says, you mean you think it was someone's plan the whole time for Bethany to take Allie's place? Wouldn't put it past anyone. Allie might have used Bethany to her advantage in order to fake her own death and get out of town. She knew that she couldn't just disappear because then people would be looking for her. The best bet was to leave an actual body wearing the clothes that she was wearing so that her mom would identify it as her. Emily says, we need to figure out a way around that picture of A at the hospital. Picture of A, picture of Allison. No, you said picture of A, and Emily's like, oh, slip of the tongue. All of these slips about Allison A, Allison A. I think it's the writers being like, oh yeah, this is what you think is happening. You think you know it all, don't you? You know nothing. They do this to us all the time, guys. Do not fall into the Allison is A trap. When there are clues that are that obvious, chances are they're red herrings. happens. The writers are way too smart to let stuff like that just slip. It's totally intentional. At the end of the episode, we see that someone is watching Hannah and Caleb inside the cabin from in the woods, and that there are fireflies in the woods. This had better not mean that those fireflies that Caleb released in Ravenswood have somehow found their way to Rosewood and are surrounding him. No ghosts, no paranormal activity shit. I can't do it. Can't do it. Next week is the summer finale of Pretty Little Liars, dubbed the fatal finale. They seem to be suggesting very heavily that someone is going to die in the summer finale. A lot of people are thinking, oh, it's Melissa because she disappeared. Other people have been saying Caleb because of the goodbye thing on the Ouija board. My theory is that it's Mona. I'm really not pleased if Mona is the one dying, because I really do like her a lot. Even when she's doing bad things, she's still so much fun. You can see from the promo for next week that the house that the press is in front of is not any house that we recognize really, so it's not any of the main girls' houses. We haven't seen Mona's house yet, so it could very well be hers. On Twitter, Pretty Little Liars Big A also did a side-by-side comparison of a still frame of Mona and her mom standing inside their house next to a still shot from the promo of the clock and the mirror that are all broken. They match up. So what this says to me is that whatever happens is going to happen inside Mona's house. You can also notice in the promo that Hannah is the one who seems to be crying the most. Despite the issues that she and Mona have had with one another, I think if Mona were to die, Hannah would be legitimately upset. Also, Mona just gave Aria what seemed like a final warning about Allie, and she was saying that maybe she should have just died when she fell off that cliff. Which brings me to my next question. Is the person who dies really gonna die? In the promo for next week, Detective Holbrook is quoted as saying that the amount of blood found in the house would indicate a fatal wound. Said nothing about a body. And we know in Pretty Little Liars world, if there is not a body that we can see it actually dead, we should not believe it. Even if this happened in Mona's house, and even if there is a lot of blood that seems to match Mona's, I am not 110% sure that she's dead. Unless I see a body, I can't believe it. I would not put it past Mona to have been saving up units of her blood over the past several months to fake her death. She definitely would have learned from Allison's mistakes in regards to faking her own death, and if anyone could successfully fake their own death, I think it would be Mona Vanderwall. She's incredibly smart. Maybe she's read that book Gone Girl and she got some ideas. And if Mona is faking her death, that warning that she gave to Aria could have been a plant, simultaneously setting Allison up for her murder, which would be absolutely insane and maybe the best revenge plan ever plotted. My final big question from this episode is, was Allison ever actually buried alive? I say this because Melissa said that she buried Bethany Young, and when she buried her, there wasn't anyone else in that grave because she had just heard Spencer and Allison arguing. If Allie was buried by her mom, was she buried on top of Bethany Young? Did Melissa leave part of the grave open? Because when we see the clip of Allison reaching up through there, it definitely seems like the whole ground is covered over. So I'm really not sure at this point if Allison ever was buried alive, or if she just knew that Bethany was and she was making that up. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of this week's episode, and if you have any theories or questions, I would love to discuss them with you. If you don't already, you can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Blogspot, and Instagram, username CandidCrandell. You can also chat with me live on Beanly during new Pretty Little Liars episodes, link down in the description. And if you haven't been chatting with me yet, you should definitely join me for the fatal finale. It's gonna be an awesome time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again on Thursday. Bye!